What the hell is the 12th planet, and why is there a book about it? Well, that's what we're here to find out. So, let's blast off into chapter 1 of this book, The 12th Planet. So The 12th Planet was written by Zecharia Sitchin and published back in 1976. It's the first book of 8 in the Earth Chronicles series and has sold millions of copies worldwide. Let's find out why. Chapter 1 is titled The Endless Beginning, and I broke it down into these 5 main topics. So let's break down this first topic. Evolution started really slow. The book begins with our original ancestor, the hominid, who roamed Earth around 14 million years ago. It took 11 million years before the first ape-man worthy of the Homo classification arrived, and then it took 1 million more years before advanced Australopithecus showed up, who started using stones. That brings us to Earth around 2 million years ago. Now fast forward another 1 million years, we finally show up as Homo erectus, and then another 900,000 years after that, we emerge on the scene as Neanderthals, still using stones. So after millions of years of gruelingly slow evolution, we suddenly explode as thinking man, or Homo sapiens, who are suddenly using tools, building huts, and even skinning animals for fur to protect against the elements. However, after several millennia, we start to regress and our population is drastically reduced. Alright, so somehow it took 1.9 million years for us to figure out how to sharpen our stones just a little bit better. Then magically, we go from cave-dwelling nomads with rocks to building huts and skinning furs in just 65,000 years. Let that sink in. It took almost 2 million years, where we were walking around thinking a big-ass hole in the wall was a great place to raise a family, to suddenly building huts in the woods and wearing fur coats. Here's where it gets a little weirder. Apparently, after all that evolutionary progress, we start to go backwards around 27,000 BC, and over the next 16,000 years, humanity dwindles down to almost nothing. But then, Sitchin goes on to say that around 11,000 BC, thinking man re-emerged on the scene and became farmers, learning how to grow fruits and grains. This enabled man to settle down for the first time instead of being on the move trying to find food. Now, he also emphasized that all of this took place in the Near East and that the Bible accurately described this process, quote, "And the Lord said, let the earth bring forth grasses, cereals by which seeds produce seeds, fruit trees that bear fruit by species, which contain the seed within themselves," end quote. Now, scholars agree with the Bible and showed that vineyards actually started in the mountains of Mesopotamia and then spread downward in a semicircle. During our descent down the mountains, we also began domesticating animals, starting with dogs around 9500 BC, goats about 500 years later. Eventually, we tamed sheep and cattle too. Alright, so here we have another ginormous leap in our abilities and societal sense of being. We've jumped from having sharp stones as blunt force objects to using tools for building and hunting. And now we're growing a variety of fruits and grains, and not just a couple of plants, like entire crops. Plus, we start domesticating animals so we don't have to chase them. All in the blink of an eye in the grand scheme of time. And yet, with all of this evolutionary progress, we somehow see another step in our cultural advancement. So here the book becomes vague with details on our progress, but basically says that around 7500 BC, we started using clay to produce pottery, utensils, artifacts, and even statuettes. Now, Sitchin also makes a point to state scholars were confused why humanity stayed confined to the mountainous areas of Mesopotamia for several millennia after 11,000 BC, but that he's going to reveal why in later chapters. Essentially, the book says that our transition from stone to clay became prevalent as we descended down the mountains to land with wet, muddy earth. However, after thousands of years of progress, we see yet another decline. So yet again, we find another vital piece of the evolutionary puzzle, and just about 3,500 years down the road from our last major feat. So we miraculously discover that when muddy clay dries, it hardens. And if we pour that muddy clay into a mold, we can cast objects like utensils for daily use. Or just create some art. Because hey, what else are you gonna do back then, right? However, after 3,000 years of perfecting clay production, we regress again, to the point that even stone utensils make a comeback. But wait, there's more. Now, Sitchin alludes details to set up for the next chapter here, but states plainly that a final and encompassing transformation occurs circa 3800 BC, where a flourishing civilization burst into an existence so profound that its foundation is deeply rooted into our own lives to this day. The chapter ends with, quote, "Mysterious hand once more picked man out of his decline and raised him to a higher level of culture, knowledge, and civilization," end quote. Final upgrade! Apparently, we got the last kick in the ass we needed. A new civilization formed that was so amazing, it still influences our society today. So we've seen the evolution of man, but before Sitchin launched that blast through the past, he prefaced it by probing into our existence on this planet in general. He states that scholars are confounded by life's presence on Earth and that, quote, "somehow it doesn't belong here," end quote. He then poses two questions. If life was created by spontaneous chemical reactions, why isn't there a multitude of sources for life instead of just one? Also, why is life on Earth created of elements that are rare to this planet instead of the ones that are abundant here? Finally, he states that the biggest thing that separates us as evolutionary descendants from our primate cousins is the ability to speak. So now, Sitchin plants the seed of doubt about our own existence here on Earth. Apparently, our chemical makeup doesn't match our home planet's chemical elements, meaning we just showed up and crashed the party. So this chapter feels like a history lesson with a tease. We now know that we as a species began around 14 million years ago as hominids. It took about 13.9 million years for us to evolve into naked men who use sharp stones. Then we suddenly emerge as thinking man, or Homo sapiens, around 65,000 years later, who are building huts and wearing furs. Then we get three more upgrades, around 11,000, 7,400, and 3,800 BC, where we inexplicably transform from hunter-gatherer into farmers domesticating animals, then into pottery experts, and finally into a full-fledged civilization so advanced its foundation is deeply rooted in our own some 5,000 years later. Plus, on top of all of that, Sitchin states that some unseen force had been helping us for roughly the past 100,000 years, and we really shouldn't even be here in the first place. No mention of this 12th planet, but the stage is set for our civilization now, so let's see what happens in the next chapter.